our youth can do in the world, in the name of their Lord and King, is an outcome of our schools, big and small. When the question is put to you, Catholic educators, administrators, professors, teachers, guidance counselors, campus ministers, librarians, lab technicians, can you sustain our schools, continue to form our youth in the joy and challenge of the gospel in today's world?
Our educational and managerial talents or skills will not be enough to be able to form, educate our young people. We need more than that. We need God's presence in ourselves as being entrusted with the care of His children, but also God's presence in our schools, Catholic as they are.
Catholic schools are resolved to continue providing Catholic education to Filipinos. They, the Catholic schools, say this because of the deep value they recognize in integrating the proclamation of the good news in Jesus Christ and formation in the Catholic faith with the delivery of excellent education.
As I accept the CAP presidency, I want to thank my colleagues in the CAP board who put their trust in me and elected me to be their leader. The real leadership is synodal in character. It is in walking together, not so much in agreeing with each other at all times, but in discerning the best pathways and positions through consultation, dialogue, and even debate, always bearing in mind the renewal of the Church.
Yesterday, as soon as I entered the convention center, I felt invigorated, especially seeing colleagues learning once again. For us, to learn is to serve, teaching and preaching is service, and we preach with our lives.
Far away from here, I could be finding other reasons, but I need away from here, where we can finally make it, you and I. Far away from here.
The Catholic School Heroes Award is a sweet song to my heart. Receiving this recognition is a great blessing to me. Today, I am overwhelmed with gladness that CAP, the association which I value so much, has been part of my life and which has been part of my life for more than 3 decades, has considered my simple work significant.
This recognition deepens the meaning of what I do and fires me with more passion for teaching, even at this stage. To our Heavenly Father, I offer my unending songs of praise and thanksgiving for all that I have and for all that I am.
The 2019 CAP National Convention started with 3 objectives in mind: to provide a venue to listen to the young and understand the aspects of today's youth culture, to find pathways of accompanying and empowering the youth, to determine ways by which CAP can formulate creative responses and innovative solutions to the needs of the youth and society.
everyone. I am Dianne Balios, the CEAP Membership and Communications Officer, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Before we start, let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we glorify and praise your name. You have showered us with blessings, and your presence continuously reminds us of your faithfulness. Even as we experience one of the greatest challenges of our time, the COVID-19 pandemic, we humbly ask you to shower our speaker today with your greatest wisdom and inspiration, so that she may share the most of her knowledge, heart and soul to this webinar. May we also absorb invaluable information and put into practice what we have learned today. We pray that you bless all the CEAP member schools and all other providing educational services in your name. Your infinite blessing would mean the success of this webinar. May we be the living witnesses of your love through the enactment of the knowledge that we will acquire today. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good morning once again to our CEAP member schools and other educators from all over the Philippines. This is the fourth session of the third leg of the CEAP webinar series. Last Tuesday, we had a session on It's All Up to You, cultivating a culture of dialogue and encounter in remote teaching, delivered to us by Dr. Pilar Romero, the Dean of University of Santo Tomas College of Education. Today's session will be the second part of our previous speakers webinar held on July 7, 2020, and due to insistent public demand, with over 92,500 views, we invited her once again for another informative session on creating powerful and engaging modules, which are very timely and relevant as we are now about to open this school year. But before we proceed, here are some of our few reminders. First, as the talk is ongoing, we encourage you to pose your questions and comments, and we will ask them during the Q&A portion. Second, please be informed that you will receive the certificate of attendance only upon completion of the evaluation form. The link will be posted in the comment section during the Q&A portion at 11:30 a.m. and will be available until 2:00 p.m. today, which is July 30, 2020. The e-certificate will be sent to you via email. Please ensure that you type your name and email address accurately. Third, this is a free webinar brought to you in partnership with Cleaves Publishing Inc. So CAP will not charge any credit card information from our participants. So we also encourage you to use our official hashtags, hashtag CAPCares, hashtag I Love Catholic Ed, and hashtag I Love CAP. And lastly, to stay updated on all CAP programs, please like our official CAP Facebook page and subscribe as well to our YouTube account, the CAP channel. And now, to discuss Teaching Today, Part 2, delivering powerful and engaging modules through different modalities, we have invited once again the former principal and head of the Curriculum Enrichment Board of St. Paul, Pasig. She is a trainer for faculty and administrators in service training of Diocese of Imus for over 6 years now. She is also a consultant of Phoenix Publishing and a trainer of the CAP Philippine Catholic School Standards. Join me as we welcome Ms. Debbie Grafil.
Good morning once again, and isang mapagpalang umaga sa inyong lahat. I'm very happy because once again, you make yourselves available to learn and continue to bring out the best in you. And I'm very happy also that you really embrace the challenges which COVID-19 pandemic really brings into our career as teachers and also as agents of transformation. Allow me to start my presentation. So once again, we have the title Teaching Today, Delivering Powerful and Engaging Modules through Different Modalities. Last time, we took up a lot of concepts, a lot of information, a lot of pedagogies, and many, many other important principles that we practice in teaching. We also took up different important practices that hopefully aim to guide us in preparing learning modules, and more so in preparing for our remote distance learning. Today, we are going to make it more concrete by way of sharing with you how we can prepare quality instructional materials, particularly module lessons. I know that last time you were so full of so many ideas, but this time we are going to narrow down and cascade those ideas into a concrete example. I'm going to use science as an example, but in the course of discussing the sample lesson, I would like to integrate also certain parts across the curriculum. So brace yourself, listen carefully, and enjoy learning more about module lessons, because I'm pretty sure you'll be able to create wonderful, engaging, and the most important word of all is powerful module lessons. Because at this point in time, we are now the frontliners. We need to save the lives of our students. And for us to be able to do that, we need to offer to them, we need to prepare life-saving module lessons that will be able to help them make decisions, engage in day-to-day lives responsibly, and of equal importance as better persons, as better members of the family, and better members of our society. Okay? And nothing is impossible. Sometimes we feel, whoa, another tough workload on our back. But at the end of the day, if we keep on saying yes to the challenges, our commitment to these challenges will lighten the load at our back. Next slide, please. Our guidepost. So once again, let us try to revisit important standards from PCSS, which will be our guideposts in developing and in learning how else we can make our module lessons more relevant and meaningful. Standard 8 says that an excellent Catholic school ensures the integral formation of the human person through a relevant, robust, and rigorous curriculum inspired by gospel values. So, in view of this standard, we aim to develop module lessons that are aligned to the vision mission of our school, aligned also to the curriculum of DepEd, and at the end of the day, I would say our module lesson intends to teach good manners and right conduct by way of helping our students acquire disposition skills and other important traits and values. Standard 9. An excellent Catholic school provides relevant and meaningful teaching and learning experiences delivered by a community of professionally qualified, competent, and committed school personnel. Your participation in this webinar signifies your intention to become better and better as a teacher, better and better as a counselor to your students, better and better as a member of our society. Like what I said earlier, we are also frontliners. We need to save our students. We just don't know what tomorrow will bring unto us, what might happen the next day. And for every student that will be able to save, it's a big, the so-called indulgencia by our parents. So my dear teachers, it's very important that we embrace the exacting demands of being a teacher and at the same time of being a frontliner by way of preparing life-saving module lessons for all our students. Let's engage them into meaningful activities that indeed will be able to save them sooner or later, and hopefully, you know, in whatever eventuality that may come their way. Next slide, please. More so, we can be guided also by PPST Domain 4, Curriculum and Planning. So, Domain 4 addresses teachers' knowledge of and interaction with the national and local curriculum requirements. So, every time we plan for instruction, we consider important guideposts. And our guideposts can be derived from PCSS, Philippine Catholic School Standards. And as teachers, we are governed also by PPST. And these are the standards for teachers defined by PRC, defined by representative schools for teachers, and also by CHED and DepEd. Okay? In this particular domain, we are reminded that it is very important for us to be able to translate curriculum content into learning activities that are relevant to learners and based on the principles of effective teaching and learning. It expects teachers to apply their professional knowledge to plan and design individually or in collaboration with colleagues, well-structured and sequenced lessons. So from these lines, we are reminded to prepare well-structured and sequenced lessons. So these lesson sequences and associated learning programs should be contextually relevant, responsive to learners' needs, and incorporate a range to communicate learning goals to support learner participation, understanding, and achievement. So we all respond to the standards of Catholic schools, and we also respond to the standards of our government. So, next slide, please. How should we work in school? I know you're doing a lot of things right now, and you're doing a lot of preparation. And apart from this, you also have to deal with your personal problems in life. But through constant prayer and being faithful, you know, we'll be able to manage to confront head on all the problems that we are experiencing right now. So, here are some simple and fast ways to reduce stress, reduce stress in planning for distance learning. First, work in collaborative teams to make agreements and share resources. You might be saying that you are not in school right now, but I know there are a lot of technologies or apps or platforms that you can use to meet with your fellow teachers, particularly those who are in your same subject area. You can conduct your subject area Zoom meetings. If not, you can also use your cell phones through video calls, okay? And it's very important that we sit down or we discuss things with our fellow teachers. So if you're a science teacher, it's very important for you to find time to share ideas with fellow science teachers. And by doing that, you have common understanding of the most important things that you need to do in school, important learning competencies that you want your students to be able to achieve, and important values that you want your students to practice as they learn these different learning competencies. Collaboration is very, very important. So there's power in number, particularly if you're doing something all for the good of your clientele, your students. More so if you're doing things all for the glory of God. Next, narrow your focus for the rest of the year. When we say narrow, this means you need to prioritize. Prioritize the important standards or competencies that you need to cover for this school year. But first things first po, focus first for the first quarter. So, DepEd has already helped us along that line. They were able to identify the most essential learning competencies. So what we need to do is to review the MELCs and look at them in view of our school curriculum. Look into your school curriculum and find out if these MELCs are also found in your first quarter coverage. And from that, you try to identify also other important skills which you have added into your curriculum, which you deem important also to be acquired by your students in view of your vision, mission. You can now put them together and integrate all these learning competencies and skills, which we call nesting. Remember, I mentioned this last time. When you nest them together, then it will facilitate the flow of teaching of these important skills, and you have the tendency also to weave them seamlessly so that at the end of the day, students begin to see the relevance of the learning competencies in view of their applications in day-to-day life, and more so for students to understand why they need to practice important traits, values, no, or character conduct as they apply the skills that we have taught them. It's very important for the two to go together, for them to become academically competent and at the same time a student imbued with good manners and right conduct. The two go together because when the students, our students, work someday, they become better persons in the workplaces because they become flexible, they become adaptable, and they become problem solvers in the workplace of their choice. And it's very important to start training them right now because the training cannot be done immediately before working. It takes time and it's a lifelong process. Hence, we need to start now in the basic education. More so, blend your concepts, skills, and even disciplines when where possible. You can do integration across curriculum. Science and math can integrate their learning competencies. English with all other subjects could easily come up with an integration. It can be thematic, it can be in terms of skills. Engage in work that helps the team feed forward. We need to move forward. We cannot just simply keep on planning and planning without doing anything that's concrete that will allow us to, step by step, every inch of the way, be able to help our students reach their goals. And lastly, be creative. Believe in your power to create beautiful module lessons. Believe in your capacity to introduce innovation in teaching. The more you believe that you can do it, mind you, the more you can do it. So let's all say, I can do it. I can do it. If we say this every day of our life, I'm pretty sure we'll all become more dedicated and more confident and more faithful and hopeful that all things will happen according to God's plan and according to what He wants us to be able to do to our students. Remember, we are only instruments of God. And through the talents that we have received from Him, hopefully we'll be able to use all these talents to help our students be the best of who and what they could be. Next slide, please. I like to begin by using this pyramid. So when does a student become competent? Time and again, we keep on using the word learning competency in lesson planning, learning competency in assessment. Now, the word itself says competent. But when does a student truly become competent? Let us use this pyramid developed by U.S. Department of Education. If we look at the pyramid at the bottom, we have traits and characteristics. Every student, every child, as he or she enters the classroom, that child carries with him or her traits and characteristics. So bawat bata po may dala-dala sa paaralan ng kanya-kanyang kaugalian, ugali, at iba't ibang katangian. Okay? And this is something that we teachers should be mindful also. And this is something that we should understand also. From nothing, they become something. So out of the traits and characteristics which every student possesses, we help them acquire learning experiences. Through the learning experiences that we offer to them, they acquire skills, abilities, and knowledge. And if you look at the triangle now, these skills, abilities, and knowledge refer to basic or fundamental skills, abilities, and knowledge. Okay? However, we educators are always challenged and even reminded to contextualize our teaching, learning processes. And the experiences of the students, when contextualized, they begin to understand why they need to learn all those skills that we have mapped out in our lesson plans, right? Okay. Now, as we integrate, help them be able to connect the skills, abilities, and knowledge to real life situations, as we help them discover the connectedness among the different subjects, as we help them see connections in varied aspects of life, between subjects and other realities of life, they gradually learn to know how to use all these skills in real life situations. So the acquired skills, abilities, and knowledge, when used in real life situations, would help our students become competent. So we can only say, or we can describe students as competent students if and only if they can already apply what they have learned to real life situations. More so, for us, the school, teachers for that matter, to be assured or to be sure of the students' capacity to perform all these skills in real life situations, whether today, tomorrow, the next day. We want to see evidences of learning. And that is the purpose of demonstration, looking for their abilities to demonstrate the capacity to use all these skills. And for that reason, we conduct assessment. So our assessment can be formative and summative. And our assessment may come in the form of paper and pen, no? But when we talk of paper and pen, we can have varied formats of tests using paper and pen. We can have lower level assessment. We can also have higher level assessment. But of equal importance, part and parcel of the assessment that we do now is we also conduct performance tasks. And the performance task ensures that students could already use the skills that they have learned, no? In order to transfer this learning into real life situations. Hence, that's the purpose of performance tasks. But at the end of the day, of equal importance also, and I would say this is the most important one, when students can practice or use or apply the disposition skills, the traits, the values that they need to practice as they use the different skills that they have learned in the class. And thus, for me, competency involves also the responsible practice of the learning competencies, the responsible practice of the skills which we have mapped out in the objectives. So, looking at the entire triangle now, when does a student become competent? When the student is academically competent, when the student is able to use appropriate traits, values, character, virtues that will make them better persons, no? As they apply the skills in real life situations. There we have a competent student. Remember the saying, aanhin mo ang batang matalino pero bastos. So at the end of the day, the student does not become competent in the truest sense. Somewhere along the line, behavior, character may bar him from performing effectively and responsibly in real workplace or even in day-to-day life situations. Assessment plays a very important role in all of this. Hence, part and parcel of the preparation of learning modules is for teachers to prepare for assessment also. The two go together. Teaching learning experiences, the plan for instruction, and the plan for assessment. In fact, assessment is a part of instruction. They go together. In the old school, assessment is being planned only after the teaching learning process. Now, at the onset, planning starts with thinking, designing of teaching learning strategies, and at the same time, planning for assessment, no? How the teacher will look for evidences of learning as the student engages or goes through the teaching learning process. So let me repeat, assessment is a part of instruction. Assessment is instruction. As we assess outcomes of learning, particularly during formative assessment, the student relearns and keeps on relearning in order for him to achieve mastery and for the student to be able, for him to be able to level up and goes on with his learning process. So hopefully we'll see this in our module lesson plan. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide, please. Next slide. Prioritize your standards and learning competencies. Okay, so maybe now go to the next slide. The slide on prioritize your standards and learning competencies. Okay, so let's see now. Looking into DepEd's most essential learning competencies vis-a-vis your school's curriculum maps. Last year, you prepared your curriculum maps and you aligned your curriculum maps with DepEd's K-12 curriculum, with your school's vision, mission, and with the demands of the present time, even with the demands of the changing times, okay? So it's very important that we look into DepEd's curriculum first, and we look at the MELCs, no? So this is the MELCs now, the most essential learning competencies. The most essential learning competencies, okay? So this is for science, grade 6, and this is for the first quarter. So you see, we still have content standard, performance standard, and there we have the MELC, and then duration, okay? No code yet for these two. Probably these are newly added to the curriculum, okay? So the learners demonstrate understanding of different types of mixtures and their characteristics. And the second one is the learners demonstrate understanding of different techniques to separate mixtures. So the focus will be on these two, okay? So we have this, if we look at this one now, you can, if you have noticed, it takes 3 weeks for the first MELC to be accomplished as planned by DepEd. And then it takes 3 weeks again for the second LC to be implemented. Describe techniques in separating mixtures. So seemingly, the first competency is enough for weeks 1 to 3. 3 weeks. If we plan for 2 sessions a week, this is equivalent to 6 lessons in all, okay? So remember, 2 LCs on mixtures, okay? 2 learning competencies on mixtures, okay? So there we have it. Because the next competency is already about biology. So for these 2 LCs to be covered for 6 weeks, it tells us that we need to unpack and we need to review the competency, the standards in such a way that we can do nesting. Okay, and how do we go about that? Okay, so we need to review the past and the future curriculum standards and learning competencies in relation to the present to determine the focus of your priority target, specific skills or objectives intended for each lesson. Why do we need to review the past? Just by looking at the curriculum, you would have a way of knowing if what is the progression of the skills from the past to the present. Particularly, we are shifting from the use of K-12 curriculum the more comprehensive to these milks right now. Okay? So we need to review the past and then the future curriculum. When we talk of the future curriculum, we can look at both K to 12 and MELCs. What will be the next competency in line with the progression of helping students know and understand mixtures? Or I think this falls under the big umbrella of matter. Okay? So take note of that. When I say review the past, it includes also the performance of your students last year and the coverage of your school last year. What have you accomplished last school year? What have you taught to your students along the line of matter? Did the students take up certain skills pertinent to mixtures last quarter or last school year rather, or none at all? If none, it means to say that this will be the first lesson about mixtures. Does it make sense po? Huh? Okay, next, we look at the future curriculum. If these are the current competencies pertinent to mixtures, what are the next competencies, skills that need to be developed in line with mixtures by next year? Okay, so you are now setting the parameter by looking at the past and the future. So what are you going to cover now? So definitely what you need to cover will be something that follows up the past and prepares the student for the future. Does it make sense po? So, seemingly there are only two competencies, but when unpacked and further studied, you can enrich these two learning competencies. Okay? So, this is the next step. Unpack into instructional objectives intended for 5 module lessons. Why 5 module lessons? Considering there are 6 weeks. I say 3 weeks, weeks 1 to 3 for according to MELC's duration, leaving 1 week for adjustment and follow-up actions. So we have weeks 1 to 3, and if at a minimum, we are planning for 2 lessons a week. No? Remember what the sample scheduling I showed to you last time. Okay? We try to provide 2 hours, at least 2 hours for every subject. And if we have 4 subjects a day intended for learning by the students, then the schedule is more relaxed. They have time to eat, they have time to relax, time to play, and do recreational activities at home. So at the end of the day now, learning at home becomes so flexible, relaxing. Relaxing in the sense that when circumstances demand that the student needs to relearn and relearn and relearn, the student will not get stressed at all. Why? Because she has ample time to study. Hello? Does it make sense? We want to be more relaxed as far as scheduling is concerned, but we are more tight in terms of giving teaching learning experiences to the students that are truly meaningful, relevant, so in short, with rigor. Okay? So if I have 3 weeks times 2, supposedly 6 module lessons. But we allocate the last week 2 lessons for further adjustment in the event that the teacher needs to give more time for the students to complete the module lessons, or be able to carry out simple tasks prescribed in those lessons. Okay? So 1 week adjustment, 5 weeks of lessons. Okay? So if we allocate the 2 days, how many competencies? So we can now allot the first competency for 6 weeks. We are aligned with DepEd. No, we are aligned. But when a teacher, especially a new teacher, excuse me, reads this, she might get surprised, no? Ano ituturo ko? Ano ang detalye dito sa ituturo ko? She does not know the details. And this is what she needs to do, no? Follow the steps, no? She needs to review the curriculum thoroughly, yeah, because there are no details stipulated here. And if that is the case, the school can enrich, can identify other details that they deem important, no, for their students to learn. Okay, next. Notice that we need to bundle or integrate content skills with appropriate thinking skills and social and or character formation skills to deepen learning experiences. Ayan. Okay? So, by integrating the competency with thinking skills, particularly those that are stipulated in 21st century framework po. I hope you have a copy of this. There, you'll be able to identify, to know the different important 21st century skills which our students need to learn also. Okay? And apart from the thinking skills, character formation skills. Pasok. Andito yan. Huh? So, that when we do this, when we bundle, when we integrate, we try to enrich the coverage of the treatment of the identified competency of DepEd, no? And we put more depth and breadth into the competency. But we do not veer away from the competency. We teach the competency, but we define clearly what is it that we are going to teach in view of this competency. Okay. Next slide, please. So finally, so here we have now subject, Science 6, grade level, grade 6 first quarter, module name, characteristics of the different types of mixtures, characteristics and types of mixtures, okay? So lesson 1, characteristics and types of mixtures we have here. But as we all know, we have 2 specific types of mixtures. So lesson 1 is introduction to mixtures, okay? And students now get to see the main difference between heterogeneous mixture and homogeneous mixture. But in lesson 2, students will learn in details the different types of heterogeneous mixtures and their properties and characteristics. So this one entails 1 session also, or 1 lesson. Lesson 3 is about heterogeneous mixtures in daily life. What are these heterogeneous mixtures in daily life? How are they made? And students will explore making heterogeneous mixtures that they can use at home and for other purposes as well. Yeah. So the same thing happens for lesson 4. Students will explore the details of the types of homogeneous mixtures. And lesson 5 is about the application or the different types of homogeneous mixtures in daily life, how they are made, and how students can develop their own homogeneous mixtures. So the teacher must be able to plan this ahead of time po. We cannot just plan one step at a time. So the whole thing now will make up one module. That's the module. The module is a big umbrella. So we have 5 lessons for this module. So recall again the different concepts in making module lessons. Okay. So if we now focus on the first lesson, characteristics and types of mixtures, we are now ready to go to the next slide, please, and know the details of the objectives. Okay, next slide. So at the end of this module lesson, so the teacher is talking to the student, you shall have been able to describe the appearance and uses of heterogeneous and homogeneous mixtures. This is the LC, the learning competency coming from DepEd. Okay, that's it. Below it, unpacking such competency, we can develop the following important competencies also. And I say these are now the specific skills. Observe and describe the appearance of mixtures based on their composition. Classify mixtures as to homogeneous or heterogeneous. Explain observations based on science concepts or principle. Cite ways of using mixtures responsibly in daily life. And evaluate how man uses mixtures to meet his needs in daily life. Okay, so seemingly you have 5 important specific objectives here, but the approach in teaching is integratedly. So as the student observe and describe, they also go through the process of giving explanations. Eventually, that leads them or helps them be able to classify the mixture. And at the end, upon knowing now the characteristics of mixtures and how to recognize mixtures based on the appearance, then they'll easily be able to come up with ways of using mixtures responsibly in daily life, and more so evaluate how man uses mixtures to meet his needs in daily life. So observe, describe, classify, explain observations, cite ways, evaluate. These are the powerful verbs in this list of objectives. And we have unpacked and we have bundled important skills with the first learning competency given by DepEd. Okay? In reality, when you teach science, you have to make the students observe something. Hence, observation really happens. And because they observe, describing happens also. And explaining must happen also. Okay? So, we have bundled learning competency coming from DepEd with thinking skills, ability to observe, ability to classify, ability to describe, explain, cite ways, or apply, and then evaluate. So where does integration of value or character traits come into this flow, in the flow of the objectives that we are about to explore? Okay, you have an answer? So it's in number 4 and number 5. Cite ways of using mixtures responsibly in daily life and evaluate how man uses mixtures to meet his needs in daily life. In objectives 4 and 5. Okay? So I hope you fully understood now the process. Okay? I think we are now ready to move on to the sample module lesson. Let us now go to the Word file for the module lesson for science. Okay. So we have here, okay, flash on the screen is the sample module lesson. Okay. So here we have again the subject, the grade level, module name, and on. Okay. So lesson number 1, characteristics and types of mixtures. Okay. So I think you know very well how to formulate objectives, because in the lesson planning, when you were making your lesson plans, you have already learned how to formulate objectives. But at this point, we just have to emphasize the need to connect or integrate or bundle or nest. These are the words being used now, no, in the academe. We need to nest or bundle related competencies. But to make our teaching learning experience, no, the teaching learning experience that we will provide to the students, no, meaningful and relevant, we have to bundle the learning competency with social skills or character formation skills, disposition skills. These are the terms being used right now. We need to bundle them also with thinking skills. And these thinking skills may come from 21st century learning framework. Okay? So, what really happens is that when we teach to the students, we make them acquire the learning competency inherent to the subject matter. But at the same time, we use important, we make them practice important skills that will help them be able to perform the competencies, you know, critically and responsibly. We want to develop critical thinking. So if we are true to our intention, then we must integrate development of critical thinking into our objectives. And there is a pedagogy about that, and that is the use of nesting, nested curriculum. Indeed, it's a practice that certain skills be integrated to facilitate teaching, to expedite teaching, and at the same time, also to provide meaningful, relevant, and powerful learning experiences to all students. Okay, so let's look at the different verbs here. Observe, okay, observe and describe. I hope you can clearly see the lesson plan on the screen, okay? Observe and describe. The module lesson rather, sorry. So, these two will happen together. They observe and they be able to describe what they have observed. Classify. It's a thinking skill also. Explain, thinking skill. Cite ways. Cite ways here now. Cite ways responsible use. This is leading to character formation. Evaluate. When we provide opportunities for the students to see realities in life, and they get to see success stories or failure stories regarding how mixtures are used in daily life, they can easily evaluate whether the practice is useful or not, whether the practice is proper or not. And for them to be able to evaluate, we help them be able to analyze also. So part and parcel of doing evaluation is to make an analysis first before one makes a final evaluation. So once again, part and parcel of being able to evaluate is for the student to be able to do a very objective analysis. Okay? So, looking at this one, okay, so here we have the instructional materials. Is it still on the screen? If not, I think we need to scroll up. Instructional materials. Okay, so here we have print materials and non-print materials. And it says here for optional, computer, laptop, or iPad, Wi-Fi connectivity, and then of course we have the science activity materials, not under optional, but they are needed also, as will be cited in the activity. Cell phone is very, very important now. Many people have, cell phones. So I think the cell phone can be a powerful tool also for distance learning at this point in time. Some cell phones can download important documents also, or videos, or be able to access certain website addresses. So if that is possible, then the students could also use the cell phone. But if worse comes to worse and there is no cell phone po, then the student can simply refer to science textbooks, reference books, and the reading material provided by the teacher in the module lesson. Okay? So, scroll up again. Let's now go to page 2. Page 2. Something to think about. Okay. Have you ever noticed the composition of soil in your backyard? What about in school? Do you think you can easily see, point out, and name each of its components? Can you describe the components just by looking at them? Why? There is a picture here that the picture would somehow support the student as he thinks about the answers to the questions posed by the teacher. So this part seemingly is like a motivation. The teacher tries to motivate the student by asking questions. And when the student begins to answer these questions, he gradually tries to connect with real life situation. And thus he realizes that, oops, there's something that we're going to learn today, something that is very important, and I need to learn it. So I need to go through this module lesson all the way down and finish everything. Okay? So teacher situates the subject matter at hand to real life as a way of capturing the student's interest to learn further. Notice there are lines after the motive questions. So we expect that the student will write his answer there, no, as a way of responding to teacher. So student responds to teacher's questions by writing it on the space provided, no, on the space. Does it make sense po? So in the module lesson, as mentioned before, we need to provide space because student needs to put into writing his answer. By doing that, we are forcing the student also somehow to interact with the teacher. Notice, teacher poses the question, then student responds. And then by and by, okay, let's scroll up again. Good job. Good job. Your response shows that you really want to learn further. Yeah. Teacher recognizes the response given by the student. See? So we're kind of anticipating. So we need to see to it that there is a space for answer. No space, it might mean that we do not require the student to write the answer. Now, if you want the students to give an oral answer, you have to require them to tape their tape the audio of their answers or video themselves, giving the answer. So the student himself, he videos himself and then gives orally the answer. But let us reserve that for activities where the student is fully required to explain something spontaneously, and it might something that requires him to think thoroughly. So we allot such opportunity for situations like that in the lesson as we move on. Okay, so scroll up again. Okay. So your response shows that you really want to learn further. In this module lesson, there it is. In this module lesson, just like in the classroom, we tell the student, today you are going to learn. Yeah. After doing the motivation, the teacher connects the motivation to the lesson proper by introducing first the, the objectives or the purpose of the lesson for the day. The same thing happens here. So it's included, it's cited here. In this module lesson, you are going to perform the activity combined materials around us that will help you figure out whether your ideas and explanation are in line or supported by science. Okay, let's scroll up. By the way, do not forget to read the objectives and remember the skills you are expected to learn. Enjoy being a kid scientist. So this line somewhat makes the student, the student feels as if the teacher is there in front of him, communicating with him, talking to him, no? Because there are lines here that truly, when read by the student, no, he would feel the presence of the teacher, even if the teacher is not present. Okay? So the absence of the teacher is not a problem at all because the module lesson made the presence of the teacher available at that very moment when the student goes through module lesson learning. Hence, we say interaction happens between the teacher and the student po. Yan po, nangyayari po yan sa module lesson. So this is now the distinct difference of the module lesson from the usual way of giving long assignments. We give them the procedure, okay? It comes in the form of something to be done. Some schools will go through that process probably, but exploring the module lesson, I say, is more kind of conversational, and the student feels the presence of the teacher. So I hope you try to explore making module lessons, inay-inay, no? Gradually until you gain expertise in making it, in the formulation of module lessons. We now go to the experiencing science. In science, this becomes the engaging activity po. What about in other subjects? You can give your engaging activity also. Notice the activity comes first. Remember, even if we plan for a module lesson, we need to plan for a student-centered learning activity also. We want the students to learn on their own. In fact, the mere fact that they learn on their own is already a kind of student-centered learning, but putting them into engaging activity or activities will make the learning process more meaningful and more powerful. Let's try to explore further. Okay. So here we have the engaging activity. So in English, it can be any reading activity, a poem, a story, and how else could we give these poems or stories? So it could be taken from a book, it could be taken from the web, it could be presented to the students in a form of dramatic presentation, like a video presentation. So the story now is being translated into a video presentation, okay? And yet the story remains the same. So there are many ways by which these stories can be presented to the students. In the old school, we do storytelling. The teacher acts like a Lola Bashang telling a story to the kids, right? And the teacher wears a costume of Lola Bashang, something like that, no? And it motivates and it captures the interest of the students. But in the distance learning, in the home-based learning, we cannot do that, but instead we can select a very powerful material, a very powerful learning activity, which becomes a springboard already of all learning. What does it mean when I say of all learning? All skills will be drawn from that material. Students will use the experience of being immersed or of being engaged into the activity in learning the desired skills mentioned in the objectives. Why only one? Because one or two to be more cost effective. If we put too many activities, we might run out of time, or students might find it too difficult already to accomplish the module lesson. So, in the plan for engaging activity, let's all remember to select the best material, one that can be used as a springboard in teaching the different competencies cited in the objectives of the lesson, or it could be the skills that we want them to acquire. Okay, let's see. More so, look at the materials. They are all available at home. In school, they might not be doing this particular experiment. It could be a different experiment. Okay, but this one requires the use of materials that are readily available at home. And even the teacher provides options also. It could be gravel and sand, it could be soil with stones, pebbles, just to provide the students with options, whichever is available at home or in the nearest locality. Okay? Then look at the sieve. We're not going to use filter paper. We are going to use sieve. Okay? Now, the best approach to teach science is to make it experimental. Discovery approach. Begin or start with an experiment and allow the students to learn the concepts from the results of observations in the experiment. The approach is truly student-centered po. In many instances, science teachers start by focusing on the facts and information and allow students to perform the experiment after they have learned already the concepts, the principles, and the like. How about trying it the other way around? Start with an experiment and process the learning. Okay? We will explore further. Okay? Let's scroll up again. Scroll up. Okay? We now go to page 3. Page 3. Page 3, please. Okay? Reminders. Just like in performing experiments, we provide reminders. Huh? Science teachers, you need to do this also even in the module lesson. Safety precautionary measures must also be given to students, even if they're just simply using kitchen materials po. Huh? So there we have the reminders. But reminders include also this number 5. Write your final answers to the questions on the space provided. Yeah. Let's now go to the procedure. Scroll up. Scroll up. Okay. Even in other subjects, if you have an activity, you provide your procedure. You provide the steps. It's very important that we plan step by step, you know, the how the student will go through the learning process using the engaging activity that you have chosen. What will I do with this poem? What will I do with this newspaper? What will I do with this? What else? With this video, okay? So be sure to give the procedure and the processing questions in the case of non-science subjects, okay? Because after going through the activity, the students need to draw out learning from the activity. And how would that happen? Through the processing questions. So, for example, they're going to read a poem, but as they read the poem, they are already aware of the questions that they need to answer. And these questions that you provide are the noting details questions. You begin with noting details questions. And then when they have answered that, that's a time that you give them the next set of questions, questions that demand already higher level thinking skills. Okay? So, what about in, for example, the subject is about PLE. Maybe the material that you give them is a recipe. Why not? And you ask them to study the recipe, and part and parcel of going through the process is for them to figure out what techniques they are supposed to use in cooking. Even in doing some reading, like in math, they read a problem, they look at a chart, or they look at a table. We provide questions to process the learning. Your guide questions are very powerful in directing the students, no, in learning. And every question must be formulated accordingly. You start with noting details, but do not give yet your higher level thinking questions. Give those higher level thinking questions when the students have already answered the lower level thinking questions, because their answers to those questions will become the scaffold to higher level thinking. So doing that now would require teachers us to review our Bloom's taxonomy, review our formulation of questions, so that we need to identify what types of questions we ask to be assured that we really provide scaffolds in the flow of asking questions to all our students. Okay, so there we have the procedure. So scroll up, put your combined materials. It says here already. So across other subjects, you tell them what to do. Read the poem, and then what is the next thing that they'll do after reading down the line. Remember, the procedure must be very, very clear, because the students will follow that step by step. The student will follow. And as the student does the each step, the student responds to the teacher also. There is an interaction happening as you tell them what to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3. No? They follow you. And when necessary, you provide questions where they are fitted to be asked already. Okay? So this experiment now, activity allows the students to discover heterogeneous mixture. Okay? Scaffold questions to guide the student in observing. These are now the questions, letter A. Okay? Do you clearly see the different components found in your combined materials? Describe each component. The use of the graphic question allows them to organize their ideas. So it's good that we provide graphic organizers, okay? Do you also clearly see the separation among the component parts? Why? So if you have noticed, the questions are sequentially arranged also, okay? Scroll up, please. Scroll up, please. Okay? So using a spoon, mix the components on the bond paper. Do you still clearly see each component? Does each component retain its appearance? Explain your answer. So if you have noticed again, this one allows the student to observe carefully what's happening or observe carefully the setup. Okay? So do you think the student could follow these steps? What do you think? Could they do this? I think so. Our main concern now is this. Would they have the focus to keep on doing every step until they're done with the experiment? Then our partner family members' role is to see to it that the student focuses on the activity, that the student does not do other things, no, that are not connected with the activity. So the role of the family member there is to ensure that the student really works on the activity accordingly. Okay, so the family member does not do the activity, neither performs the activity with the student. Her role is simply to guide the student. O anak, nagawa mo na ba yan? Anak, tapos mo na ba yan? Sige pa, kaya mo yan. Okay. So, a pat on the shoulder just to see to it that the student does not become bored and the student is fully engaged. You know, parents will see this happening at home. Somehow, I like to believe they might be helping the student in the preparation of the materials. That's okay, no? But when it comes to the performance of the activity, it should be really the student alone doing the activity. But she can be helped at some point on matters of, fixing or preparing the setup. That's a big help already for the student, okay? In fact, when they do this, they should prepare all the materials ahead of time before they start doing the procedure, okay? More so, scroll up, please. Okay, what were you able to separate from the mixture? Why do you think you were able to separate it? So you see, questions are sequentially arranged. Even you yourself, you could already figure out what the teacher is trying where the teacher is trying to lead the student into in this flow of questioning, in the flow of questioning. What is it that the teacher wants the student to discover from this activity? And that's the beauty of really allowing students to perform in science, because experiencing science is more powerful than simply, reading facts and information. Okay, let's move on to the next page, please. Page 4. How could you possibly separate the rest of the components? Try different ways of separating them. So the teacher challenges the student to try another way of separating or explore different ways of separating components of the mixture. So at that point, I think the energy of the student is moving up already. It's getting higher and higher. And as he engages into the activity, his his focus becomes so captured already, and I like to believe that the student begins to figure out what the teacher wants him to learn from the activity. Okay, so if the student goes through that process, then that's a very good practice, because the student is thinking about thinking. Where does this flow of questioning lead me to? What is it that I'm going to discover from this flow of questioning? So, even in other subjects, across subjects, when we ask questions on, pertinent to stories read or articles read by the students, we need to arrange the questions in such a way that the student at the end of the day will be able to reach higher level thinking. At first, they might be answering lower level thinking, but by and by, every answer to every lower level thinking question prepares them for the next level thinking. Particularly, the next level thinking requires them to answer questions in the higher order already. Okay? So, through this process now, we allow the students to practice, to engage into lower level thinking. Then, as he moves on to higher level thinking. So what is the implication here of this one now? Thinking in the higher level will not happen if the teacher will not provide opportunities for the students to think in the higher level. Hello? Does it make sense po? We must see to it that the learning activity that we provide to them provides practice, or for them to practice or exercise the skills that we want them to achieve, to acquire. Remember, the classroom is the seat of the acquisition of these skills. And the very fact that we prepared a learning activity, it is with the end view that we want them to learn from that activity, learn and acquire the skills, because they're going to learn through the use of those skills. So we become focused on the skills. As you prepare questions, does answering this question require my student to think in this way and be able to learn the concept of? So every time we teach concepts and principles, we also use thinking skills for the students to be able to deduce, elicit, or be able to arrive at those important learning. Let's remember that important concepts, important ideas will not be able to deduce by the students if we do not assist them in the learning process. Tandaan po natin yan, ha? Walang batang mahina kung pagtsatsagaan natin. But first and foremost, the tiyaga must come from us. We need to be patient in preparing lessons that will fully help them learn fruitfully and learn productively. So, it takes two to tango po. Students will learn if the learning materials are well prepared. That's a bottom line there. It takes two. We give our best shot, students will give their best shot also. But we hope and pray that family members will guide them in the course of learning to help them become more focused. Okay? So let's scroll up again. Let's go to part B. This is part B. Combining solid and liquid substances. Okay, so there we have materials again. This part of the activity allows the student to discover homogeneous and heterogeneous mixtures. Again, look at the materials. These materials are readily available at home. Meron po sa bahay niyan lahat, no? Yan. Let's go through the procedure once again, okay? So notice on this side, we have a rubric for the explanation, okay? So, rubric for the observation po. Please correct that. Rubric for the observation, okay? In science, when we ask students to perform experiments, it's very important also for teachers to respect results of observations, provided that students really exercise proper noting of details during observation. Okay, there are some observations that might have been noticed by the students during the experiment, which when we perform the very same experiment, we never noticed. So it could happen that way. So therefore, science teachers should not should check experiment results, but not as to the absoluteness of the correctness of the observations. Because we have to take into consideration also the explanation given by the students about such observation. Why? For example, we expect that the litmus paper should turn to blue, but it turned out that it became, say, green. And the student wrote that the litmus paper turned to green, and you were expecting it to change into blue, and then you put a mark X. But in the reality, the student was so honest, was so in giving the observation. So when we do that, we promote cheating. So what is important in science experimentation is for us to see to it that the student, the ambience, the environment is really conducive for experimentation, and that procedure, every step is carried out accordingly, leading to accurate results. Okay? If somewhere along the way there are results that are not in line with the expected results when the experiment is performed accordingly, then the student needs to provide explanation. Why? What went wrong, and what probably happened in the course of the experimentation. There are many things that could also be considered. Okay? So we have another activity. Simple lang po, ha? Stir the salt and water mixture in glass A for about 30 seconds. Then in another glass of water and oil naman. Yan. Ganun lang kasimple. No? Ginagawa nga natin pag nagluluto tayo. Yan. Okay? But once again, we have steps here, and there's a rubric for observation. Okay? So we need to provide the copy of the rubric to the students so that the students will become aware of how we rate them or grade them on the way they conduct their observation. So provide a copy of your rubric across subjects. If there are open-ended questions among the questions you'll ask in the higher level thinking, you need to provide a rubric. Give the rubric side by side with the question so that the students will look into your criterion or criteria, and the student will try to meet your expectations. And as they read the performance indicators in each box, they try to see to it that they do this also. And by showing or by letting them know of our standard, they begin to try to meet our expectation also. Yeah. So unlike before in the old school, we were never told, and we were just informed after our output was graded already. Okay? So rubric is very important. Okay? So again, in your activity, notice the observation here is all about the description of the appearance of the mixture. Have you noticed that? Okay. So, part of the rubric, what they are looking into is already aligned to the objectives for the module lesson. And that is to be able to describe the appearance of mixtures. And it's also stipulated in the rubric. And this is what I meant by alignment to the curriculum. What we're doing is aligned to the objectives, aligned to the curriculum, and what we're doing truly promotes the achievement or the attainment of the learning competency that students be able to describe appearance of mixtures cited as stated in the MELCs. Okay, so there is an alignment. Alignment is very, very evident. Okay, then let us scroll up again. Do you still see the oil after you have stirred setup B for 30 seconds? What do you think happened? So they get to see. Nakikita po nila, no? Na-observe nila. So, nahahasa yung skill nila on noting details. In English, they note details about character, events, etc. In science, they note details as they observe experimental setup or as they observe given setup. Okay, sieve the salt and water mixture. What have you noticed? So once again, this can be answered by the student based on his observation. So as he observes, the student immediately writes down the observation. So the module lesson becomes what? A learning material and at the same time an experiment activity sheet also. All rolled into one. Nandyan na po lahat, no? Yeah. Okay, now, let's go to page 5. Let's scroll up again. Okay. Wow. So, look at the side note there. What does it say? Online learning, face-to-face interaction between the teacher and the students. Teacher conducts guided discussion of the results of observation. So, if we look at the entire stretch of the whole module lesson, which part or in which part do you think student needs teacher's help or explanation? In which part do you think? The teacher here feels that she needs to discuss, she needs to conduct a discussion on the results of the activity. So she needs to conduct an interaction with the students for them to shed light or probably for the students to share what they have noted, no? And at the end, guide the students leading to better analysis and interpretation. Yet the teacher has not done yet or has not started yet doing any analysis and interpretation. It's the role of the students. The students themselves should be able to do an analysis and interpretation. So teacher during the online learning will keep on asking questions about what students observe during the activity. And the teacher wants to know whether some of the students failed to perform certain parts of the activity, which might not help them come up with a good analysis and interpretation. Hello, does it make sense? In the old practice, science teachers provide lectures ahead of time before experimentation. So after the performance of the experiment and writing the reports, students simply submit the reports. and there is no discussion at all. Nowadays, it's very important that we go through discovery approach in learning science. Experiment or activity first, followed by the processing of learning. Because learning will be drawn from the experience of doing the experiment or the activity. Learning will be drawn from the discussion about the results of the activity, the observations. Then we say now that the experiment is truly used as a springboard for learning science concepts. Sa kanya hinuhugot yung learning. So if we go now to across subjects, English, you ask the students to read a poem, to read an essay, to read a short story. What's the point? Is it just a matter of learning details about the story or what's the moral of the story? I don't think so. Of equal importance, you're trying to develop certain thinking skills and skills that are peculiar to effective reading. Hence, what are these skills? So the focus there is the development of the skills. And if ever they could already identify or note details, congratulations. It means to say that the student practice what? Noting details. Congratulations. But does that student need more practice on noting details? Yes. One story is not enough. Just like in mathematics, one item is not enough. We provide more items. Practice makes perfect. Hence, even in mathematics, we do the same thing po. We provide adequate materials for practices. Okay? So, the guide questions are very, very important. So if you're teaching a story or you're teaching certain skills in English, which part of the whole stretch of the module lesson is the most important part to be delivered via online? Identify that part. Then the rest of the parts of your module lesson can all be carried out or answered by the student at home. Home-based learning. Because even the online time must be utilized productively. It must not be spent unwisely, students not learning anything at all. So whether they learn via online, those parts, or some students who do not have any computer at all would learn the such chosen part of the teacher by using module lesson. Same thing, because the activity, the procedure prepared by the teacher are parallel. Okay, hence we have here, okay, great. You have done a good job. Scroll up. This time, I want you to read science information, concepts, or principles which could help you explain your observations about the mixtures that you have prepared in the activity. Yeah. Okay, so science, no? Yung mga science and good job, pictures, they all help also. So the student needs to look for information about mixtures which will guide him in doing analysis and interpretation. So they could all be doing this in two ways, using print materials and using non-print materials. In using print materials, they could refer to textbooks, reference materials, and the like. Newspapers, magazines, Bible, what else? Signages, posters around in the locality, no? So this can be possible reading materials, print materials, okay? And sometimes students have their own materials at home, but if they don't have any material at home, then they have to guide the module lesson input given by the teacher on page 9. Page 9, okay? We'll go to that page later, okay? So in the conventional module lesson learning, So the student uses the input developed by the teacher about mixtures, which is found on page 9. We'll go to page 9 later, okay? But those who have access to internet, they can, okay, let's scroll up. They can visit any of the given links here. Teacher says any, only any, because any material could help them. Yan, okay? See, there are 3 links given. And so the students will select any of these links, okay? So when the students now make use of this, we now say the module learning becomes asynchronous. The student uses also web-based materials. But these materials may be accessed either during the time the student is scheduled to learn the subject or during another time because connectivity is not yet very strong. So, or they could access the materials during or when the connectivity becomes stronger already, and still the student uses the schedule for to study the subject, no, at that particular time to do other things. Okay. Now, can a student with access to internet makes use also of the teacher's module lesson input? Yes, why not? So they can also read the material given by the teacher, developed by the teacher. This is what I meant by teachers writing their own explanation, teachers writing their own discussion of concepts, ideas, and all. You have to create your own material to be included in your module lesson, okay? And be guided by the copyright law po. Please know the copyright law, because you cannot copy everything from any print materials. For all you know, you might be already committing plagiarism. Huh? Take note of that po. Okay, scroll up. Okay. So the student has already acquired, has already read, has already viewed varied materials pertinent to mixtures. So what do you think happens now? So in the classroom, normally in the face-to-face interaction, the teacher gives a lecture about this. But we're trying to develop independent learning skills among our students. And therefore, as we guide them to practice independent learning, hopefully, eventually, it becomes habitual among our students. That at this point in time, you know, a good teacher does not lecture anymore, but a good teacher helps the student to look for information. So this is a particular example of that. Let's scroll up. Okay. So when you give them varied materials to read and varied resources to access, you're giving them the chance to know more about mixtures without the teacher giving a lecture about mixtures. This could happen in the face-to-face interaction, like in the old normal. And this could all the more could possibly happen during this distance learning. Yan. Okay? So this is asynchronous. Scroll down again. So the students are now ready to do analysis and interpretation. So this is the instruction. Classify each of the mixture that you have prepared in activity 1. After naming the classification, explain why by relating your observations with what you have understood from the read or viewed print and or non-print materials. Because here, science teacher now intends to make the student connect his her observations with the concepts, facts, and principles he or she has read or viewed about mixtures. Now, when students go through this, they can say a lot of things. they can analyze and they can interpret in view of different concepts, facts, and information. And this is very powerful po. This is very powerful. So, when students have adequate, here comes now what we normally do in the classroom. We begin by knowing all facts and information first before doing an experiment. Now, you perform the experiment, set aside your observation, and begin looking for facts and information. And then connect those facts and information and principles with your observations. Then we say the experiment or the activity becomes truly a springboard for learning science. Ginamit natin yung activity upang matuto ang bata. For the student to acquire the skills, the student will go through a lot of observing. The student will go through a lot of describing the appearance of mixture. The student will go through a lot of giving of explanation. Wow! Can you just imagine all those skills? And this is just one experiment po. How much more if all these students will keep on engaging into discovery approach learning? Okay? So, let's scroll up again. Huh? Ayan. Scroll up. We are now in page, what page are we now? 6. Okay? Yan. So, this part now, analysis and interpretation, the student is already moving up to higher level thinking. Yung observing earlier, they were on where? What level? Lower level thinking. But does it mean to say that the lower level thinking is no good? Is not important? No. Remember, we cannot go up if we don't step on lower level steps. That's why the lower level skills are scaffolds to higher level skills. So do you now see the beauty, the importance of planning carefully the questions that we will ask to our students? Pag magulo ang utak po ng teacher, mali-mali ang tanong. Naku, asahan niyo po, mali-mali din ang mangyayaring pag-iisip ng bata. So the student becomes as good as the teacher. So let's make it positive. We are good, and therefore, our students will become good also. So, if we review again the process, we are now on the higher level, analysis and interpretation. Scroll up. There we have it. So, the student is asked to classify the mixture, but they have to explain how come. That is your classification. Okay? How come? So they begin to explain a lot of observations, that they have to mention, describe the appearance, etc. It's going to happen here. Salt and water, the same thing also, oil and water. And then, ayan. After doing analysis and interpretation, they are ready now to move to conclusion. Answer these questions based on the results of your analysis and interpretation. At the end of the day, what is it that we want them to be able to learn? For them to know what mixtures are. And how did they come to know mixtures? Because they went through a lot of processes of describing the appearance of mixtures. Ayan. And they experience real examples of mixtures. What are homogeneous mixtures now? What are heterogeneous mixtures now? So as they answer the conclusion, if you have noticed, students will not be able to formulate a good conclusion if they don't have any they have not done any readings at all about mixtures. They need to read, they need to know, whether by video, or by listening. So from results of analysis and interpretation, the learner can already define mixtures, homogeneous mixtures, and heterogeneous mixtures. So we expect definitions here on an operational basis, based on how they have encountered mixtures in their experience in the experimentation or in the activity. Hello? So, we're helping the students to learn the competencies using the activity alone. But it takes what? The whole period already. Let's scroll up. I scroll down. Sorry. Very good. You were able to describe the three mixtures that helped you classify them correctly into homogeneous or heterogeneous mixtures. Let us try to find out if you can now describe other common mixtures around you and classify them also. So the experiment or the activity became the seat of acquiring the skills, learning the skills, practicing the skills, and this time the students are ready to go beyond, going beyond, to expand learning. So this is now stretching your learning. Scroll up, please. Up, okay? So here in part A, recognizing mixtures. Classify each mixture. You may check the availability of these mixtures in your kitchen for better observation. Pag wala, okay din po. And explain your answer. So notice this is now practice, practice, practice. Do they know how to describe appearance of mixtures? Do they know now how to classify the mixture as to homogeneous or heterogeneous? Ayan. So the practice of gradual release of responsibility, GRR, allows the student to relearn as he makes mistakes. Therefore, X and X's are very important, in the lives of our students. Students must be able to see these X and X's as entry points for learning, as entry points for them to receive, intervention or guidance from teachers. So therefore, notice that we expose them to three, and then immediately we require them to see answer key for possible answers. And this is now the rubric for explanation. There's a rubric for explanation. Okay, scroll up again. Okay. Seemingly it's easy to classify this, but I think it's the ability to explain, which must also be acquired by the students, is very important. Okay. Some students could easily classify, and yet when you ask them to explain, they could hardly explain. So understanding may be manifested through the student's ability to explain results of observations. Okay. Then see answer key for possible answers again. Part B, scroll up again. Responsible use of mixtures. Classify the given mixture in the scenario. Evaluate if the practice or its use is responsible or not based on the teachings of the church or healthful living. Explain your answer. You see, these are practical examples. Paula loves to drink calamansi juice. Her mother prepares juice for her by using 2 teaspoons of sugar only. One day, Paula prepared her juice by mixing 5 teaspoons of sugar into a glass of water. So, what will they do? Evaluate. They will classify the mixture, the final mixture prepared by Paula, and whether the practice is responsible or not. Hello? See? Very simple, yet it can be easily contextualized to real life situations and challenge the students, no, to think about what the church and what healthful living or even rules of our country, policies of our country, laws of the land say about certain situations. So I think even across subjects, we can give them items that are contextualized. Let us remember that we need to help them become good decision makers. We need to help them make informed decisions. We need to help our students, make judgment, sound and fair judgment. So we need to practice them. Practice makes perfect. And such fulfillment of the practices that we carry out in the classroom soon or eventually may be challenged in real life situations. Another one, these situations happen in real life. Magtikloy works as a garbage collector. The city of Mabunga is very strict about the practice of sorting out garbage. However, after getting the sorted out garbage, okay, scroll up, from the different households, he mixes them again and dispose in the dumping site. I think this is a reality in some cities or localities. No, even if households practice sorting out, this sorted out garbage when collected, are being put together also and thrown all together again, mix up in the dump site. Take note again, this is something relevant to the life of the students. Then after 2, time out, see answer key for possible answers. What could be the possible reason? Let's scroll up again. Up, next page. What's the reason? We want the students to check whether he is on the right track of doing things, whether what he does is correct or not. And he has time to do that by checking his answers first. And upon knowing and upon reviewing the rubric, the student would come to know, I'm on the right track because all my answer is correct, my classification is correct, and I did well in the evaluation. By the way, who rates the evaluation? Student himself rates himself on the way he evaluates. He writes his evaluation. Remember, he explains his evaluation and he rates himself also. Now, you might be saying, naku ma'am, paano pag binigay niya yung highest score sa kanya? Totoo ba yon? Then, when the teacher, when you get back all module lessons, what's the role of the teacher? It's more of validation po. The teacher validates results of the answering of the module lesson. Okay, there's another one. Josephine loves to drink boiled ginger with turmeric and lemongrass, which she calls GTL. What type of mixture does she have in her casserole? Yeah, ginger, turmeric, and lemon, GTL. After boiling, she sieves the boiled mixture to get the liquid portion only for her drink. What type of mixture is her GTL drink? Is it helpful to take? Is it helpful to take her GTL drink? So that's a question now. Is this a practical example? Yes. Particularly during this COVID time, a lot of us develop or create our own ginger brew, no? Okay. So again, it's a very, very practical example. A very practical example. Okay. See answer key for possible answers again. Okay. Okay. So let's now go to part C. Okay, scroll up again. Using mixtures in daily life. Enumerate 3 ways by which you can responsibly use mixtures in daily life, okay? And the next, closure, synthesis, and reflection. What is your most meaningful learning or takeaways from this lesson? So we are now on reflection. So you see, down the line, we finish until closure. And then check on your learning targets. I can already observe and describe the appearance of mixtures based on their composition. I can classify mixtures either as homogeneous or heterogeneous. I can explain, I can cite examples, I can evaluate. So all these are here again. So the student rates himself 1, 2, or 3. And the teacher uses this as a feedback to help the students perform better again. Or the teacher could use this data to redirect the learning of the student. So how will you improve your learning process in the next module lesson? So this is the final question. Okay, let's scroll up again. Okay, so that's the last part. But this is now the module lesson science reading activity. Let's scroll up again to page 9. Okay, page 10 rather. There you have it. So this is the input of the teacher. Input po ng teacher yan. And this is a product of research po. And you just have to be very careful. Either you make use of endnotes, no? Bibliography. What is important is that you have to cite your sources of information down the line. So it's a page of input for the students. So who'll read this? Can all students read this? Of course, all students could choose this. Okay? But so in a conventional way, the student uses only this and other print materials. In an asynchronous process, the student uses this also and print materials, and at the same time, the web-based materials, if she'll be able to access those materials. What happens if she fails to access those materials? Okay, then, because she learned also from this material and from other print materials that she has at home. Okay? Now, what happens if during the delivery of online learning, connectivity becomes weak or there's a typhoon? So the students will not be able to access the online learning. It's okay then because the students will still be able to learn using the module lesson. So at the end of the day, the module lesson becomes flexible. Flexible. Once you have given this to the student, you don't have to worry anymore in the case that some students will keep on calling you up, texting you, Miss, hindi ko po na ganyan, Miss, hindi ko na download, etc., etc. No worries at all. They simply have to shift from conventional to asynchronous or asynchronous to conventional. But all of them could go to conventional module lesson learning. So the module lesson learning is the baseline po, the backbone of learning. That's the backbone of learning, which all students must have in common. All students must have in common. And then if they go through some accessing of web-based data, even the student would also be able to learn, but those with connectivity will be further enriched by those materials. And they would also learn how to get or to use skills in accessing information. They would be able to practice that. The online learning allows students this time to ask questions from the teacher and ask for more details. But at the end of the day, all of them will learn. So can you imagine how different students in the households learn? Some are learning using print materials only and the module lesson. Some are learning using the print materials and access to some web-based materials. But due to weak connectivity, the student or those students could not access the online learning. And some students could access online learning, and they could also access web-based materials. And they could also use the backbone materials, the backbone learning. So at the end of the day, all of them will learn po. All students will learn. Okay? So apart from this, we have the answer key. And for science, the answer key is more based on the experimentation. They are more based on the rubrics. Okay? And just to show you an example of a more detailed answer key and follow-up material, allow me to show you one material in math before we end our session. Let's now switch to the second word file material. Okay, keeping track of my performance. This is for math. And as you all know, math is full of exercises. English could be another subject where we can have plenty of exercises. Okay, so see to it that you develop a kind of material like this where all the competencies are summarized. And then as a result of the exercises, so you know what every item assesses po. This is very important in the formative assessment. You know what the item aims to assess. So here we have number 3, which is worth 4 points, assess students' ability to visualize using black grids. Item number 7, worth 2 points, assess students' ability to visualize black grids also. So that's the meaning of this one. But notice, we are not after the total score alone, but of equal importance, and the most important rather, is the score in every competency. There are competencies that can be clustered, like here for number 1, block and disc counters as 1, visualizing, 26 total points, relating visual, and creating another way of representing numbers, and then representing numbers in real life. That's another one also. So there we have it. Okay, but what's the point in getting the subtotals? Because we want to give follow-up intervention action. And you can have them built in your module, or you can give to the students the follow-up intervention, no, after submitting the module lesson. So here we have follow-up. Look at this table. Okay, next page, please. Table of intervention. Okay, so there we have it. Different levels of performances, A, B, C. But there are 3 different levels of performances in every competency. Yan. Some might be doing well in one competency, but not in another competency. So we need to look into this also. So it's very important that we mapped out our competencies very clearly and align the intervention to the competencies, and align also the assessment items to the competencies. And the best of all is that we be able to prepare and design a very powerful, engaging activity to which we can help the students acquire those competencies or skills. Yan. So here we scroll up again. We have intervention activities here. Okay? Okay? Yan. So students will only answer the intervention activity intended for him. Okay, scroll up again. Scroll up. Up, up, up. Okay, up. Scroll up again. We are now on page 3. And intervention B. Scroll up again. Intervention C. This is for the highest level now. And this is something to do with valuing already. Responsible use of mathematics in daily life. How could you practice honesty in doing visual representations in daily life. So at the end of the day now, uh, when you have one like this, it completes your module lesson. It truly becomes self-implementing po, because the student has a way of knowing whether his answers are right or wrong. And just like as what I have shown in science, if you have noticed, after two items, the student needs to check first before he moves on to the next item. What's the purpose? For the student to learn. And if it's important for him to relearn, it's a necessity, then the student needs to relearn all over again before moving on to the next assessment item. Okay? So this is for mathematics. You can develop your own material intended for your subject. I know you can make one like this also. Start with by doing it, developing simple materials, and eventually you gain more expertise and achieve scholarly output in the course of repeated practice of the making of follow-up performance for your students. Okay? So I think we're now ready to move back to the PowerPoint po. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. So we have presented the objectives. So do you think the students were able to learn how to observe, and describe? Do you think the students learned how to classify? Do you think the students learned how to explain? And do you think the students were able to cite ways by which they could use mixtures responsibly? And do you think the students now know how to evaluate how man uses mixtures to meet his needs in daily life? Well, there are students who'll be able to perform to the fullest, but there are those who'll be at the middle, and there are those who might lag behind. But at the end of the day, the module lesson is flexible. They can always relearn and keep on relearning until they gain mastery. So this is the beauty of the module lesson. They have better opportunities to relearn, unlike in the old school. In a regular class, many do not like to ask questions because the teacher might scold them, or their classmates might label them with terms that are not very good to hear. Okay, so here they are on their own, guided by family members. So I think all of them will be able to learn to the fullest if they're given the chance to relearn and relearn, as long as our materials are flexible and have the tendency to guide the students. Okay, so where's the feedback? Where's the feedback now? Why providing constructive feedback to students is important. Yeah. So feedback is any response from a teacher in regard to a student's performance or behavior. It can be verbal, written, or gestural. The purpose of feedback is in the learning process is to improve a student's performance. Definitely not to put them down po. Huh? So let's remember that. Okay. Our feedback must be very, very supportive. Our feedback must provide, kind words to the students for them to remember and for them to become inspired, to learn and continue to learn, even if they are in confinement. So the ultimate goal of feedback is to provide students with an "I can do this, I can do it" attitude. At the end of the day, feedback should be kind, specific, and helpful. Next slide, please. So the feedback that we give to our students should be very, very specific in view of the competencies the skills that we have stipulated in our plan. I suggest that every teacher must conduct a conference with every student. It's quite too taxing, but if there's a way, please try to fulfill that. It's nice to talk to them, even just for 5 to 10 minutes of conference with them, and for you to be able to share to the students your kind words, and for you to be able to give, you know, um, academic guidance, formation guidance, by which they could become better and better every day. It's kind of different when they hear your voice. It's kind of different when they hear kind words uttered to them by a teacher full of concern, full of passion. You will be able to inspire them and allow them to learn and learn to the fullest. Remember, your voice is very loud and powerful to allow your students to learn further. Next slide, please. Remember to partner with members of the family. If there is a need for you to conduct a conference with the family members or any of the family members, please do so, particularly if the feedback is very important in view of the performance outcomes of learning of the student. And when we do this, parents feel that they are important and they feel that you really give time, no, to them, and thus you want to establish a very good partnership with them. Okay, and our parents are blessings to us, and we too are blessings to them. Let us all remember that we are all blessings to parents and students as well, in as much as they are blessings to us also. Next slide, please. So, my dear teachers, respond. Be at the forefront. Offer to our students our life-saving distance learning. We are frontliners who have the capacity to save the lives of our students. Our curriculum, our instruction must be life-saving. We can save the lives of our students. Remember the saying? We can either break or make our students. We can either save them or not at all. But we intend to save all our students, just like what many frontliners are doing right now, particularly our medical frontliners who are saving the lives of our not students, but saving the lives of many Filipinos and many people who are inflicted with coronavirus. We do our share also of saving lives, saving the lives of our students. Thank you very much, and I hope you learned. I know you can develop a far better module lesson with your participation and involvement in our 2 webinars. I always believe that you are ready now to bring out the best in you. I congratulate you all, and I hope that you will continue with your conviction to help the students become better and better. They are your best legacy to the whole world po. Maraming salamat po, and congratulations to all of you once again.
we are back. We would like to give a virtual clap to Miss Debbie for another fruitful and comprehensive discussion. Thank you po. As we start our Q&A, you may start posting your questions and comments below. Please be reminded that the link to the evaluation form that we have now pinned at the bottom of the comment section will only be available until 2:00 p.m. today. For those requesting for a copy of the material used for this webinar, it will be uploaded and ready for download at www.caep.org.ph by this afternoon. Also, we would like to acknowledge the members of the CAEP board who are watching today. Good morning, Father Iking. He commended greetings from Dumaguete. Okay, so let's start. So I would just read po, Ms. Debbie, some of the commendations that the participants posted. This is from Ms. Veng Gonzalez. Love to have a copy of your presentation, ma'am. It really promotes critical thinking among students. Learning by doing or engaging activities is a must in teaching science. So yes po, for the material, it will be posted on our website po. Another commendation po from JCBC. Thank you so much, Ma'am Grafil, for those very clear explanations. I admire you for being such an excellent lecturer. Okay, so we move on po for the first question, Ms. Debbie. So this is from Ms. Jocelyn Paredes. So question is, how can you help us validate the authenticity of the students' answers to the modules?
Okay. First and foremost, we start by we cannot outrightly look into validity without preparing the ground po. We need to prepare the ground. And by saying this, I say we need to conduct our orientation to parents and to students as well. We need to condition their minds and help them understand why they have to practice academic integrity. When I say academic integrity, it covers honesty, and then sense of responsibility, okay, and more so scholarship of outputs, okay. So when we talk of academic integrity, we promote to the family members, I say, and to students as well, that we want really to help them learn to the fullest. And doing acts of dishonesty will put them all the more into further conflicts. Say they give us a very they give a feedback that they fully learned the lesson, they copied the answers, so they reflect to us 100% performance, perfect performance. So on our end, because teachers now, our main role now, I love this role right now, it pushes us to the wall to really do our job now, to really monitor outcomes of learning, looking at the answers on the module lessons and other submitted evidences of learning. We must be able to evaluate whether the student is ready to move on to another competency or the student needs further exercises, further activities that will help him or her learn to the fullest. So a student who gives a 100% outcome in the formative assessment conveys the message that he fully understood the lesson, and therefore, what intervention could we give to that very good student? Of course, challenging activities that will help them become advanced, that will help them explore other topics on their own, no? Because they are already ready to move on to the next. So probably the teacher gives more challenging activities to the student. And if they simply copied and they gave a wrong impression to the teacher, then there will be a mismatch. The intervention, no, for advancement that will be given by the teacher and the reality. So who will suffer at the end? Di po ba bata rin? So I think this should be clearly explained to them. Because if that happens, there is no academic integrity, then it will lead to a failure in learning also. So we just need to strengthen that po. Now is the time also for us to promote the culture of honesty, academic integrity in our schools. This has been a problem ever since. but circumstances now necessitate that we practice this. Okay? And even parents, sino bang magulang ang, diba? Gusto mo matuto anak mo, diba? So, you will be one with the school. Another thing po, no, after orientation, let us be clear on the practice of formative assessment. Are you going to grade formative assessment and include that in the computation of the final grade? If you do that, you will promote cheating among the students. I say, on our end also, schools and we practitioners and stakeholders, I say that if we want to promote honesty, then let us put up or implement practices also that promote the practice of honesty among students and stakeholders in general as a whole, no? Kasi kung yung procedure din natin sa school hindi sinusuportahan yung practice ng honesty, hindi mangyayari yung honesty po. I think that's another thing that we need to look into also. So these are things that we need to look into to prepare the ground. Prepare the ground to set the tone, and to set the environment conducive for distance learning. And when I say orientation, you can have a separate orientation for students, another one for parents, and follow-up orientations po, kamustahan. Naalala niyo yung mga bata, pag one time mo lang ni-remind, nako, pasok dito, labas dito. So we need to do the same thing again. We need to have follow-up orientations, and we keep on reminding them about academic integrity. And then also to our parents. Next, the next level now, how do we validate the results of the students' learning? Consistency po. We see to it also the way we plan our module lessons, there is no room for them not to understand every step of the way po, sana. Na when we make the lesson plan, every part is clearly described, or when the student reads every part of the lesson, they could easily follow, they could easily learn. So learning becomes easy for them, but there is depth. Look at our activity, very simple activity. All of us could do that at home, yet we have expanded the learning process. It reaches social formation. It reaches also critical thinking development, and they all learn how to describe mixtures, whether it's homogeneous or heterogeneous. Iisa lang po yung LC na dinevelop natin doon, but we have bundled or nested with it when in the course of unpacking that LC into related. Let me remind again, we bundled the learning competency mandated by DepEd with social or character formation or disposition skills, and also thinking skills, derived from 21st century framework. But the teaching happens integratedly, not discretely po. They all happen connectedly. So, looking into your data now, review. Because the role of the teacher, you don't check anymore. The student checks the formative assessment, no? Parang high tayo. Pero ang mabigat na role natin is how to study consistency in the performance of the students. Tingnan po natin. Kaya dapat po develop items that will allow you to validate. Do not just make one item that will assess one competency. Come up with other items that will validate that they could really do it, whether it's in the lower level learning thinking skill process or higher level thinking process. So creating more items, but I'm not saying very long, yung tama lamang po. Baka sobra namang dami, mapagod na rin yung mga bata. Remember, there are many subjects in all. Okay, so that's it. See to it that you develop items that will validate and check validity by looking into the consistency of the performance in the students across all those different items po. Malalaman niyo po. Ngayon, kung talagang ang bata ay medyo lang, bibigyan mo pa ng follow-up work. So we now validate as to readiness of the students to move on to the next learning. We validate consistency in performance. So I hope we are not validating in terms of honesty at all. When we reach that point, congratulations to all of us. Kasi alam natin, output yun ng bata. So reviewin lang po natin how we process formative assessment. Kung graded po yan, ay delikado po, no? Pero tingnan nyo po yung proseso nyo rin ng computation of grades, no? Okay.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Debbie. Well, as much as we want to accommodate the other questions po, I think it's already time po. So I just want to ask Ms. Debbie po, any final advice to all our educators? Because I know po, even for my son po, his school will start next week, Monday po. So any advice po sa mga educators natin po who are watching with us right now?
Prayer. Pray very hard. And always have a growth mindset for your students po and for yourself also. Huwag niyo kalimutan yung sarili niyo po. Maraming bagay tayong hindi alam. Kahit po ako matanda na. Pero with God's grace, I keep on learning and relearning, and my desire to be of help to all of you out there inspires me to keep on relearning and relearning. And I think you are capable of doing that. You're much younger than me, and I know you have the power to continue bringing out the best in you. I know you're loaded with work right now, but no amount of work will make you feel so tired when the intention is to lift up back to God all the blessings that we have received from Him. Wala pa pong tatapat sa ginawa niya para sa ating lahat. Siguro itong pagplano ng lesson na napakaganda para sa ating mga bata ay katiting lamang kumpara sa ginawa ng Diyos para sa ating lahat. So continue to pray very hard and your dedication po. Napakahalaga po ng dedication. Without your dedication and commitment, you will not be inspired. And nobody will keep on pushing you to bring out the best in you. Strive, pray, and keep on giving yourself to others. We are the frontliners now, my dear teachers. Let us save our children. Let us see to it that our lessons are life-saving. Thank you very much po.
Thank you again, Ms. Debbie. And that's a wrap. We would like to thank Cleves Publishing Inc. and Raxo City for partnering with us on this entire webinar series. And speaking of series, please do watch our next webinar on August 4, 2020 with Attorney Edgar Jet Pasqua as he discusses private matters, data privacy in an online world. On behalf of our President, Father Elmer G. Dizon, the CAAP Board, and the CAAP National Secretariat, this is Dianne Balios signing off. Thank you again, Ms. Debbie.
Thank you very much, and maraming salamat din po sa SEAP. To Father Elmer, thank you very much, Father.